of soul.
This is Bass Talk Live. Your host, Mark Jeffries and Matt Pangrack. BTL is brought to you by Lowrance, Lose, Strike King Lures, Bass Cat Boats, Ducket Fishing, Spro, AFCO, Big Bite Baits, Sunline, and TH Marine. BTL coming at you. Good Thursday, everybody. Welcome once again to another edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we're going to talk bass fishing and anything else that we want to talk about. Yes, it is the BTL Watch Party. We're going to bring Mark Menendez in here just in a moment. We have some great BTL fans lined up to join the party, and it's pretty cool. And right off the bat, once again, I have to thank Bass, Jim Sexton, Bruce Aiken for allowing us to do this. It is a very, very cool thing of which we get to hear Mark Menendez take on whatever's taking place on Lake Guntersville, a stingy Lake Guntersville. And can't wait to get Mark on and have him break down some of the stuff that's going on. The other thing is, too, if you want to jump in on the instant feedback, not on the YouTube feedback, but on the instant feedback on the Bass Zone, if you want to join in, I'll throw a link out there where you can join the party. And hopefully your technology will work fine, and you can jump right in there and ask Mark some questions. That's the beauty of this, folks. The ability to ask Mark questions while the action is taking place on Lake Guntersville. So let's go ahead. Let's bring Mark in here. Mark, how you doing, man? Oh, hang on a second. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Mr. Jeffries. I'm doing well.
All right, first and foremost, how is your health? How are you doing physically? What is the outlook on you getting back in the game?
Well, I'm telling you, Mark, I'm mad because I'm sitting here and I'm not on the Tennessee River at Guntersville. So that ought to give you some indication. Therapy's doing very well. I'm working with a professional bass fisherman, Dr. David Wooten in Memphis, Tennessee at the Wooten Clinic, and he's putting me through some specific therapies that has made my life much better. So I'm actually starting to consider maybe trying to fish the very last open at Lake, get back in my Skeeter boat, and that will give me a pretty good indication of how much more PT and exercise I need to do to get ready for the season. But right now, my hopes are to be back in my bass boat for the beginning of next season.
All right, we're going to go to the action here in a few minutes, but I know you've been watching it. We're day one into it. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting. You know, we've just completed the Northern Swing on the Bassmaster Elite Series, and hey, that was like a Star Wars tournament. Most of the guys were using their electronics, using their Garmin units, looking forward for those fish. We got to, Mark, this is an old-time fishing tournament.
Yeah.
Because of all of the vegetation, it kind of renders all the Star Wars technology a little bit muted. So this is actually guys spending more time trying to find them with their rods, getting in those areas. There are guys that are fishing this that are covering tons of water, looking for little ambush points. And then you've got those guys that have got that trolling motor backed way down, and they're being real thorough. So that's what our battle is going to be, the guys in an area versus a guy that's hustling, trying to get one more bite.
All right, your day one leader, Kyle Welcher, interesting comments. He didn't give up a whole lot of juice, but he did say that current was a key to his day one success.
Well, current always positions your fish, and it gives you an idea at where that fish is looking. Current makes bass fishing a heck of a lot easier than being down there at the lower end of Guntersville in that massive lake with all of those golf greens, Mark, all of that green grass out there that all looks fishy, and fish are in very small places. So current limits the area the fish is going to be in and makes your job a heck of a lot simpler.
All right, I noticed the fish, they look really skinny. You see a few fish that are caught that are plumped up, but the vast majority of fish being caught, this is typical for this time of the year, or is it not?
Well, a lot of it depends on the surface area that the grass is covering. Bass are very specifically grass-oriented fish. They love to be in that grass, but when you get too much surface coverage or too much grass in the lake, about 30% surface coverage, it makes it actually harder for the bass to feed. So that's one of the things that goes on Guntersville. And in the Tennessee River in September, it's just a flux. You've got fish coming in, you've got fish moving out, you've got fish that are basically starting to hone in on threadfin and gizzard shad, and they're having to chase them. So it takes a lot of energy, and you see some that become quite lean.
All right, two things. One, not a single 20-pound limit on day one, and the cut line right at 11 pounds. What are your thoughts?
Well, I hate to say this about my home river, but the Tennessee River in September is the absolute toughest time to fish it. So a 2.5 pound average along the Tennessee River is always good in September. You'll have that guy like Kyle did yesterday. He got a good bite. You take that 6-pounder away from him and you put a 2.5 pounder in there, he had less than a 3-pound average. So that one bite, the guy that can get one good 4+ pound bite a day is really going to move up that leaderboard fast.
All right, Matt and I got into a discussion about the mental aspect of the game when it's tough. What is more mentally challenging? When you're in a swing fest and everybody's catching 20, 25, even 30 pounds, and you walk in with 11 or 12, is that tougher than going out and only catching maybe 5 or 6 pounds when you know the event is brutal? What is more mentally challenging?
I think it's this event. I think it's knowing that I'm only going to get 5 to 7 opportunities at best, which means A, my efficiency has to be perfect, which B means that I'm not going to get many bites, which means I've got that trolling motor moving fast. So it means power fishing for me most of the time. And in the power fishing techniques, I'm going to move a top water out of that because that's a least efficient bait. I'm going to move a spinner bait in there. So I've got to fish with baits that are efficient, that allow me to get that 5 to 7 bites in that. And it's an absolute, Mark, it's like falling down on your face when you get a 2.5 pounder coming to you. You get ready to swing him in and he comes off. Oh my God. You just want to curl up in the fetal position and cry like a baby, but you tough it out, you get up, you go, and then you hope that you get that one fish to replace it. It's tough in these conditions.
All right, we've seen a lot of the guys that are locals there that know the lake very well. They kind of struggled on day one. What are your thoughts?
Well, you can know too much on Guntersville. That's an absolute thing that can happen. That happened to me in the Bassmasters Classic this year. I know Guntersville very well. But what I have seen are guys that are really pushing the limits on the normal amount of information that you get out there in that historic information. You got Zaldane that is out there throwing, tennis shoe size swim baits out there on historic areas. It worked yesterday because he landed that key fish of an 8-pound, 6-ounce big bass. He's holding the big bass lead. But then you take Kyle Welcher or you take Lee Livesey that don't know the lake that well, and they're fishing in an area that historically don't get a lot of pressure, and they manage to get good limits, and they're both in the game right now. So it really is a unique situation. I like going to lakes that I've never been to this time of year because I fish on instinct and not on memory.
All right. Now, some of the day one action and some of the action that I've watched this morning, it seemed, at least early, that obviously grass is going to come into play, but the other thing was boat docks and shade. What can you tell the fans about that?
Well, in this particular event, in these fall events, it is of the utmost importance, Mark, to get a quick start, get 2, 3, 4, maybe even a limit in the boat before it becomes 10 o'clock because the fish are most active. Right now, those boat docks they're a little bit like the current equalizer down the lake. You know that there's shade under there. You know that there's an opening under there because the grass can't grow there because of the shade. It gives you an area to pinpoint. And you have to hit a lot of those to get in those key little areas to get a bite or two. But that fish is a pretty easy fish to catch. You don't have to search a lot of area. And if you can get a few of those, the next 2 hours of that, those fish are going to move into that shade, and we're going to see a lot of boat docks play here in the next 2 hours. The grass that you're really looking for is chunky grass in places that the fish can set up and you can get a bait bite. No, not those big mats of grass first thing in the morning.
All right, it's test time. There was an exam that Matt gave me during this week. He said, "Did you realize there are 5 types of grass on Guntersville?" I was like, I knew there were a lot. I didn't know there were 5. I thought there were probably even more. Can you name the 5 types of grass?
Well, we've got hydrilla, we
Yep.
have milfoil, we have eelgrass, which has become the dominant player. You've got coontail, and then you've probably got a little bit of spiny naiad in there. And there's some more grass. The one thing that's happened, the phenomena that's happened on Guntersville, Mark, is the eelgrass. Now, it is a native species. It's not an invasive like a milfoil or a hydrilla, but it has basically blanketed the bottom from the bank out to about 15 feet, and that has dispersed so many fish and given them good areas to be in that a fisherman wouldn't normally attack or really put a lot of emphasis on. So with that phenomena happening, that has spread the bass population out on Guntersville, which makes it appear to look like they're not catching as many. The bass just have more room to hide now, so it's making it a little tougher for the anglers. So how to do on the test?
Yep. Needle, you did excellent, man. You passed. Flying colors, A+. Done, finished, good to go. All right. Is it like a needle in a haystack, Mark, this time of the year with all the grass and everything going on?
It can be, but then again, in those massive grass fields, you're looking for something different. 20 yards of milfoil mixed in to the grass, patchy spots of coontail, anything that will cause a cavern under the top of that grass. That's what you're trying to find. And right now with that eelgrass, it does not. It becomes very thick. It becomes very matted together and thick, and you don't have those caves and caverns that you need to drop a big weight into. And it's hard to find that stuff. But if you find a couple, 3 or 4 of those that you can rotate through, fish move in, drop a big weight down on them, wind them to the surface like several of our guys are doing.
All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a break, come back with the action from the water with Mark Menendez. Everybody, stay tuned. We'll be right back with the watch party from VILLE.
The ultimate fishing system starts with Lowrance HDS Live. The best fish finding tools, from chirp sonar and fish reveal to side scan and down scan imaging, and complete touchscreen control from your trolling motor to your big motor.
We've paired one of the most iconic hulls in the history of bass boats with a proven lineup of trusted accessories. We're bringing you best-in-class value and performance, leaving others in your wake. Turnkey value, turnkey performance. The Pantera 2 is an overachiever in the 19-foot category. Once you hit the throttle, you'll feel the rush, and there's no looking back.
Kevin, what are you doing here?
Oh, I'm just filling in for Billy.
I need a 660 shad crankbaits in the Series 5 model.
We're out.
You're not out. You got all kinds of them right there.
We're out.
Kevin, I need 6.
Have a lollipop.
I do not want a lollipop.
Have a lollipop.
Do you have it in sexy shad color?
Let's face it, fishing electronics are no longer an afterthought. They've become a necessity. And at the Bass Tank, our experts match you with the right electronics, provide professional installation, and educate you to help maximize your catching results while providing support along the way. Because let's be honest, it's about catching, not just fishing. And when you're ready for better results, join the Bass Tank team. Visit us today on Facebook or go to thebasstank.com.
Hey everybody, Tide Faircloth here. Want to show you one of my favorite braided lines, SX1 30-pound Sunline braid. I use this braided line for a couple of different applications, and one of my favorites to use for this line is a swim jig. Casts great, and it's small diameter, and just works really great on a swim jig. Another technique I like to use for 30-pound SX1 Sunline braid is whenever I'm flipping like a light, say an 1/8 to a 1/4 ounce weight in grass, small diameter, I don't lose much action on my worm, just works great in those scenarios. So if you're looking for a braided line for a swim jig or fishing a light Texas rig, check out Sunline's SX1 30-pound braid.
AFCO's new Uri performance shirts are made out of a new fabric. Aero mesh technology, aero mesh fabric, really breathable. You know, it just doesn't stick to you whenever you're sweating. It's 105 in Florida. You know, you got sun beating down, there's hardly any wind. You know, your shirt won't stick to your back or anything like that. Any little breeze gets through it, and all the AFCO features that you like with the hood, not without a hood, depending on which one you like. It's got odor technology, so your pits don't stink whenever you're sweating. It has thumb loops. So whenever you're driving down the lake, 70 miles an hour on a bass boat, you got the thumb through here, sleeves won't roll up, so you have no excuse if you get sunburned. Any little breath of air gets through you and cools you down, so make sure you check them out. Any fish, any water, any conditions, AFCO has you covered.
All right, we are back on a Thursday. It is the VILLE Watch Party with Mark Menendez. And let me get him queued up here. All right, Mark, it is time to bring in our friends that are going to participate in the watch party, and we will get to the action here just in a minute. I am getting everybody queued up here. We have John, Chris, Jason, and Rich to kick things off. All right, guys, thanks for taking part in the party.
Thanks for having us.
All right, let's go ahead and let's go to the action. And we're going to be on Chad Morgenthaler first, and there's a great look at that grass, Mark.
Yeah, looks like he's found some hydrilla there mixed in with that eelgrass. See that big massive flat out there? That's primarily eelgrass, and what he's looking for are isolated pieces. You can see coming down the outside edge. Looks like he's probably out on the main river right now. Earlier he was in some pads, but he flips right to that one little isolated front where that fish can get in, get out, and have that ambush point. This is one of Chad's best techniques. He really loves that big flipping stick and a big 2-ounce weight. He and his good friend, the late Glenn Brown, used to really do well together in Florida doing this technique. So this is right in his wheelhouse.
All right, Mark, let me ask you this. For the fans that are watching that may not have seen this type of Lake Guntersville this time of the year, why is he not right up in the middle of it?
Well, it's hard to move. Like I said, that eelgrass grows together so thick, it doesn't provide enough room for that bass to move in and around. So it's actually like a wall. Now, if you get up in the top of that, you may find an area. You can see some opening areas in there. That kind of thing he may slide up into. But that stuff is a true wall of grass there. And that outside edge is about as far as those fish can penetrate.
All right, bait of choice. Most of the time when you're trying to fish grass down there this time of the year, what would it be?
Well, if you're using this particular technique, you want a bait that's compact. You want a bait, looks like Randy Sullivan hooked up. But you're using a bait with very few cleavage.
Well, that looks like a trick worm there.
It certainly does. A very, straight, so he doesn't get hung up in any outside grass. He can get it under the dock. And that's another good thing in that thick grass. That's a real quality fish. That's a better than average fish to get in the boat right now. That's a 3.5+ pound fish. That's the kind that carries you some distance.
Fish still looks skinny though, Mark.
He has not started to feed up good yet. The water there is just falling into that 70-degree range there. They'll get fattened up here pretty soon when that water falls into the middle 60s. They'll start really feeding up.
All right. Now, did you notice how far underneath that dock that he had either skipped or placed that wacky worm, obviously in the shade? Is there grass around these boat docks too?
Sure, there is in most places. It almost is a whole rim around that dock. And you can see that fish came right from a corner where that little bit of walkway stuck out there. There's a ladder there. So it gives that fish a place he can stick his head inside the shade and look out from that vantage point and Randy skipped it right to that place, and that fish was in a very predictable place on those docks. That's a good bite for Randy, even though that's his first keeper. Yesterday, he had a limit very quick using a crankbait, but flipping caught his better fish, so he's moved straight to flipping today.
All right. Now, you guys, if you have a question, I can see you. Just kind of raise your hand, say, hey, Mark, I have a question for Mark, and we'll get to it. So anybody that wants to jump in there and ask Mark anything, now is the time. That's one of the beauties of this format.
I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Mark. Yeah, I was wondering when you're pre-fishing for these kind of events like these guys are here in the fall, how much of the time are they like just kind of going? I know with grass it's not as applicable, but like say you're fishing rock or something, how many of the time do you think these guys are going down banks like graphing looking for bait fish, or are they actually like casting kind of and visually looking for fish like up on their deck?
Well, that's a great question, and that's how fishing has changed due to technology. Before I had my Garmin Live Scope, I fished more. Old school, I'm ancient. I took that rod and reel and I fished down the bank very slowly. But now with live scope and or side scan, I spend a lot less time fishing and looking for those fish on electronics. The one thing that's really key in events like this, when you're only getting 5 to 7 to 8 bites a day, I fish a lot without hooks this time of year. I just want to be able to get a bite, feel the fish, and then maybe find 3 or 4 or 5 right there in an area. But I don't hook them because it's you're limited on what you're going to catch. So I think right now most of the guys are using rods and reels and fishing like we used to do years ago.
Gotcha.
All right, Mark, I have a question. We just saw Randy catch that really good fish on the front side of the dock in the shade. Why would you not key into that and wait? Why would he be wasting time right now or not wasting time and key on the front sides of the docks with shade since he caught a pretty decent keeper on the front side?
Well, you may have multiple fish under each dock, Mark, and right now it's still relatively low light. You can see the long shadows, and as soon as daylight breaks, they're along those seawalls, they're along those walkways, and they're just starting to move back from having been hunting and going to a rest period. They'll still bite if you drop a bait in front of them, but they're just not going to chase. So those long walkways, and being that it is fall, there he goes. He got another bite right there.
Yeah.
Got him a little peanut. Those walkways are the first place they move to, and then they'll migrate towards the outside of that dock. Now, he may find during his day's time that those better quality are out there a little bit deeper, and that may change it. Right now, he's just trying to gather 5. He doesn't care if they're 15¼ inches or they weigh 8 pounds apiece. He wants to have 5 in that live well, and it'll settle him down.
All right. Is it typical for the fans that are watching and listening that this time of the year you want to key on all sides of docks? I mean, there's docks all across America with grass, without grass. But this time of the year, fall, when the fish do key on the docks, how important is it to make sure that you attack all sides of the dock and try and, get clued in to at least where they're positioning on the docks? And does that happen in the fall?
Well, it does. I mean, look at the sky, particularly over there on Luke Palmer. You can see the highlight of the sky. And that old largemouth bass doesn't have a pair of good sunglasses. He doesn't have a pair of S11s like I have out there fishing. So that darker side is where that fish is going to sit, because he can sit in the shade and look out. Because in the fall, we have so many more of these high bluebird days like we have right now at this event. So shade becomes a real factor. Now, shade can be found. Guntersville primarily has the stationary docks because the water level doesn't go up much in a year's time. Lakes like Bull Shoals, lakes like lakes that are very, very clear water lakes, I still target docks, but they may be floating docks in which only have 10 to 15 inches of water over the top of their head. As long as that largemouth can get underneath there and get in that shade, that's what you're doing. You want to find the darkest areas as possible.
All right. Now, I have to ask. I mean, Guntersville, all of the chain of lakes on the TVA, pretty infamous, the out edge bite. You're fishing out. Everybody fishes out. Is that just non-existent in the fall this time of the year?
Well, it's less existent because you've got all of those grass lines that are pretty straight. When you find an irregular feature, a corner, a little bit of a drop, what I really like to find is a wall, Mark. If I can find an edge of the grass that is a wall that hits the bottom and I don't have grass tapering out off of that wall, that's a key place. That's almost as good as it becomes an ambush point in that grass for me. So I will spend a lot of time with side scan looking for those, but I do like that definitive edge of a wall this time of year. And I think we'll see somebody get a bite or two like that.
All right, how important is current? We talked a little bit about it earlier, and obviously Welcher said, hey, it was a key for him. But so many people are familiar with the out bite when the current is strong. Is that non-existent?
Well, it's less existent this time of year unless you have those conditions like we had a couple weeks ago. One of the things that has kind of thrown Guntersville off is we had 2 hurricanes that were predicted to come up from the Gulf through the Mid-South and drop massive amounts of rain. And they both missed the Guntersville area. Some rain did fall, but not those huge amounts that were predicted. So they pulled that lake down about 2 feet. This lake only it varies about a foot and a half from spring to winter. So when that water falls, it sucks those fish out. And when the water comes up again, there's less fish that have a tendency to go back to that bank cover. The bank cover fish, being the docks and the rocks and the corners and things like that, are the easiest to get to. And I think you're going to see on day 3, guys that have relied on this pattern, this shallow pattern, are going to be wishing they had them a place out behind them, because they're going to pluck all these easy available fish away from this cover pretty quick.
All right, John, do you have a question?
I do.
Okay.
What have guys pretty much written off the traditional ledge bite for this event?
Well, that's a good question. Fritz, in his infinite wisdom of how he's such a good offshore fisherman, spent his day out there, and the bite gets limited out there, John. The fish have broken up, the schools have broken up, and they're starting to move shallow because they're following the bait fish. There's always a percentage of fish that live deep, in my opinion, and those places that are out there, they're still on some of those same places, but the numbers are far less in what they were, and they tend to be smaller fish most of the time, particularly on Guntersville, because if a bass has a choice of cover, he's going to choose grass, and you're getting less current. So those offshore places tend to kind of diffuse a little bit. You get smaller groups of fish. You get 3, 4s, and 5s maybe, and then instead of those 20 to 100 member schools out there, you get smaller schools. So that's why you're not seeing as many people out deep.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah, go ahead.
Factor.
I'm Mark Chris Blank from Sock Center here. How are you?
Good.
Good.
Good morning.
Pleasure to be with you. Following up your dock, talking about the dock talk and the bank, does it replenish, and does the current help them replenish? Will they go to the tips of the docks, or like you said, day 3 and 4, they're gonna be struggling and scrambling here?
You know, if I were fishing and I'd found groups of fish in the back pockets, like Randy is headed towards the back of a pocket, the ones that will replenish will be the ones that are further out towards the main lake mouth, or towards the mouth of the pocket. There's just more area to draw more fish from. Those docks that are ultra shallow, way up under or way up in the back of the cuts, those are the ones that probably won't replenish as well. So you may see the guys having to back out a little further to replenish, to get docks that have been replenished.
That makes sense. Thank you.
All right, I want to welcome Josh. How you doing?
Sorry, I was on mute. I'm doing fantastic.
All right, if you have a question for Mark, just let us know, raise your hand, and we'll get your question answered.
You know, Mark, one of the interesting things I saw on the weigh-in yesterday were alternate species being weighed in.
Yeah.
Lee Livesey hit a grand slam, and I don't know that this has ever been done in a Bassmaster tournament unless it was done at a Table Rock. He had largemouth, he had a smallmouth, he had a spotted bass, and he had a mean mouth, all in a 12.5-pound bag. So I found that to be pretty interesting. And I saw several other spotted bass. Spotted bass population at Guntersville is on the rise, which is kind of odd. And those fish won't be in the grass. They're going to be on rock banks. They're going to be in the current. So those fish are readily accessible, and they're quite a few 15 inchers on Lake Guntersville.
All right, let people know what a mean mouth is in case they don't know.
A mean mouth is a cross generally between a smallmouth and a spotted bass. It doesn't happen very often. The spotted bass go to spawn about the same time the smallmouth do, and every now and then they'll kind of wink at one another, and they'll crossbreed like that. Occasionally, Mark, I have caught 2 largemouth smallmouth crosses. Very strange on the Tennessee River. So that's what you call them, a mean mouth, and you basically have to look at your state regulation to see how that state recognizes it, whether it's a spotted bass or it is a smallmouth cross or smallmouth designated bass with the Fish and Wildlife organizations. But these alternate species of fish are playing this time of year on Guntersville. They don't play any other time of the year very well.
All right, let's see what the replay of the day is. Oh, this is Randy catching that fish way underneath that dock.
That fish was actually made a left turn there when he set the hook. You could see him come up on the other side of that pole.
Yeah,
that's a good fish, Mark. I'm sure he's proud of that one.
I know a lot of people, they will throw, Matt being one of them, will throw a wacky worm on a spinning rod and reel, and he's using a bait cast. How difficult is that to do what he is doing with a bait cast?
Well, I don't know if he's throwing a wacky worm, Mark, or not. It looks to me like it may be a Nico style rig where he's skipping it under there, or it may be just a lightly rigged Texas rig. You can see these slats in these docks, and the landowners there put those slats in there so you can't get in there very easily, sneak into their docks, and it's really hard to pitch an open hooked bait in there. Which makes, crappie shooting docks, that's a lot of fun to do, shooting in between there. But I want to pull a crappie out of there shooting that dock. I want some big line to get that largemouth out of there.
Yeah. Do they have mean mouth in Kentucky?
We have a few. We sure do.
Interesting. Let's see here.
Hey, Mark.
Okay,
So,
go ahead.
You kind of mentioned spotted bass on Guntersville, and there definitely is some in there. And when I was down there last April, I got the sense the locals didn't really care for the spotted bass. They felt like they were negatively impacting the largemouth. I mean, have you heard that? And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, Guntersville's the land of the giant largemouth. And your lake has a carrying capacity. It can only have X amount of fish in it. The smallmouth or the spotted bass breed fairly prolifically and grow very fast. So you end up generally with a population of spotted bass in a lake like Guntersville that generally stays small. You don't get a lot of those 18 to 20 inch spotted bass. There's a few, but not many. When I was growing up in the late 70s and early 80s, and my fishing was taking off, you could target them here on Kentucky Lake. We had 4.5 to 5 pound spotted bass. The average spot was a 15 to 18 incher that weighed 3.25 pounds. So if you overpopulate that area, those spots don't get as large, and they become a nuisance. They become a little nuisance fish. They'll tear your soft plastics up. They'll bite the trailer off your hook, and it becomes a nuisance. But this time of year, anytime you can get one over 15 inches, the guys are glad to have it, I'm sure.
All right. On the instant feedback, Mark, Rusty wants to talk a little bit more. We mentioned it at the beginning of the show about the mental mindset of only getting 5 or 6 bites a day and how difficult it is.
Well, it is. And you have to be able, if you have one get off, and you have to be mentally strong enough to say, okay, we're still got 4 in the live well, still going to get that 5th one here in the next few minutes. You have to stay positive about things. We fishermen, Mark, we're the biggest babies. We cry when we get a hangnail, we cry, or we miss one that might have been a keeper. Oh my gosh, that was my limit fish. The world, Chicken Little is who we are. And we have to get past that and realize that we still have time. We still have good water in front of us, and that next fish is going to come. So being very positive this time of the year is very important in tournament competition. Always thinking, I'm going to get one on that next bite. And one of our little buddies that comes to mind on that is Charlie Hartley. Charlie is the most positive angler I've ever been. He could lose 10 10-pounders in a row, and he thinks he's going to get 10 more 10-pounders to bite. And that's what it takes in these tough tournaments.
Wow. A number of people on the instant feedback want to know your opinion on the pressure that has been on this lake due to the COVID situation. But not only that, I mean, this is one of the highest pressured lakes in the country. How much of an impact is that going to have on fall fishing and this tournament?
Well, I don't think it's going to have that much, Mark. The thing that's made Guntersville so good for so long is the grass. And there's more grass in it right now, so there are more chances for that fish to hide in areas in which an angler is not going to cast to. So the fish can find some refuge, but it's just making the playing field. Guntersville's a huge lake, 40-some thousand acres, 50, 60 miles long. But when you take more of that 6 to 15 feet of water that becomes great habitat, instead of just the edges of the grass, or instead of the bottom structure, those ledges and those drops where we all tend to focus our attention because we know we can get to a fish. When you get that in between, that allows that fish a chance to rest and get away from angling pressure. So that's why this lake in particular can handle the pressure every day.
All right. Any questions, guys? Take advantage. Mark will do his best to answer your questions.
Another structure question.
All righty.
Secondary points. Do you think there's many guys running secondary points?
Secondary point deal right now would be good. Like I said, if you had a wall of grass on the end of that point, a place where I could just pull up to a specific section of that point and move to the next one. The unfortunate thing here at Guntersville is most of the secondary points have a tendency to taper. So you would have grass that would be tapered out there in deeper water, and it would be a longer process to locate that key area or locate that fish on that taper. Remember, this is all about risk management. And if I can find a place where the odds are better, and that's one of the things about Kyle Welcher, one of the things about him that has made him such a good young fisherman. You guys know what Kyle does in the off season? He's a poker player.
Yeah, that's right.
He's a professional poker player. So he plays the odds. All he's doing is putting the odds in his favor. It's not a guarantee that he's going to win the hand. It's not a guarantee that he's going to catch another 7-pounder like he did yesterday. But he's playing the odds on getting bites. The more bites he gets, the more odds he has a chance of catching a big one. So that's kind of the thing that I try to do. And those secondary points might not be the best place to get a quick bite. I might find a concentration of fish on one of those long points, but to get that quick bite and maximize my time advantage, it may not be the best scenario right now.
All right, Mark, let me ask you this.
Mark,
what about, I'm sorry, one quick question, and then we'll get to your question next. Retreads. All right, there was a lot of discussion about retreads when tournaments get this tough. Do you think that the retreads with so many tournaments that they have on Guntersville are going to come into play?
Well, they might. There's a few little areas there in Guntersville where a lot of tournaments are held, and so you have an unnatural higher population of fish in a certain area. And there's so many tournaments going on right now on Guntersville. A retread is a man. Those guys that need one more bite, they have a lot more confidence going to one of those retread areas. I've never caught a retread in my life, Mark.
What?
And if you believe that, I've got some swampland too. In times of desperation, when I need one more fish to get into that cut line like you're seeing right there, at 13 pounds, hey, dude, I have caught several retreads like that. So that retread theory can go a long way. Looks like we're moving up the lake to see what's going up here on the upper end now.
All right, I apologize for interrupting. Go ahead and answer or ask your question there.
No problem, Mark. Say, Mark, talking about, we were talking earlier before we were on air about the locals. I know Canterbury's doing good, but kind of describe, I know Matt Herron, a lot of these guys are struggling. Yeah, it's memory, but they're just not adjusting or haven't seen the lake like this at this time of the year? Or can you explain that a little bit?
No, they've all seen the lake like this, and they have real preconceived notions. And it's really hard to leave an area when you know there's a little thinner grass area, there's some rock under that grass or whatever there is there that you know typically holds those fish in that area, and you just end up running those same places. Where you've got Kyle up here with a fresh mind fishing the day. He just landed his first keeper there. That's going to give him some momentum. He's fishing his ability where old Grumpy that I love dearly, Matt may be fishing a lot of that memory, like you said, and it's a hard call. Sometimes memory really helps in ultra hard tournaments. It gives you some confidence in an area to fish harder. But sometimes when, I hate fishing on Kentucky Lake in the fall tournaments here because I know so many places, I've caught so many fish. The last tournament we had on Kentucky Lake here in the Elite Series, I made the top 12 by fishing an area I've never fished in my entire life on Kentucky Lake. Went completely against any knowledge I had and went in there and worked those fish out. And that's what Kyle is doing versus where Matt is in the standings. I didn't even call Matt last night because I didn't want to hear him griping.
All right, real quick, we got a glance of what Kyle Welcher was doing, and he was somewhat secretive or kept things quiet as far as the structure that he was fishing. But I noticed one thing there, Mark. There wasn't a whole lot of current in the area that he was fishing. It looked really, really calm and still, where the grass was bunched up to a somewhat 45-degree looking bank with trees and stuff like that. Is that a typical pattern in the fall on Guntersville?
Well, it is. And what it does, what he's doing is he's eliminating the area. See, he only had 6 or 8 feet of grass that is his primary focus on what he's trying to accomplish there. He's not in a big mat of grass. He's only focusing on this much grass instead of that big area. So he can keep his bait in a depth zone. He can keep his bait in the specific area. Now, here's the guy we're going to have to watch, Mark.
Yeah.
David Mullins is one of the best young anglers with a crankbait, and he loves a big plug. And where he is right now, he's in Town Creek, and he's on a big shell bed right there. Now, this is a piece of structure within a bay. And one of the great things that you can do in the fall, matters where you are, is get on the creek channel and follow it to the back of the bay. And somewhere along that creek channel, you're going to find a population of fish. And right there where he is, it makes a 90-degree turn on a shell bed. My 6XDs have come across there many, many times where David's fishing right now.
How much does color matter this time of the year, Mark?
You've got this high bluebird day. Color would matter a little more today. You want something that's relatively soft. You don't want anything that stands out too bright today. So I'm just guessing, knowing David and how many times he's come to my boat to reach for a green gizzard 6XD or 5XD. That's probably one he's throwing, if not maybe a sexy shad in color. But I want something that's fairly muted on these bright days. A little bit more overcast or lower light conditions, a little more definitive, stronger profile.
All right, when you're fishing these shell beds, as he's doing right now, how important is it to make sure you're making contact with those shell beds?
Well, that's the thing about a crankbait, Mark. Anytime that I'm throwing a crankbait out deep, it is my job as an angler to make sure that bait is reaching the bottom and bouncing on the bottom and causing that deflection. The deflection is the key to make that fish impulse and strike. So you have to make sure you choose a crankbait that either gets to the bottom or the angler has to impart a stop and go, twitch the bait, do something that is erratic to make that fish bite it. But I want that plug smoking that shell real hard.
All right. Any questions, guys?
Yeah. Mark. So Baitman in the YouTube wants to know, on Kentucky Lake, there's a really good gravel bar bite with topwaters in the fall. Do you happen on Guntersville, or does it not because of the grass, or what are your thoughts on, because they're both TVA, right? So what are your thoughts?
Well, we have so many, there's a gravel bar in the mouth of every pocket every main lake cove on Kentucky Lake. That's just the geography and the topography of the land. Guntersville, the grass kind of negates that. There are a few little gravel spots in which you can get on, but Guntersville just does not have that same kind of feature like Kentucky Lake has. So that's a tough deal. The top water bite may work well early in the mornings on those walls of grass that act like a bar, but Guntersville just doesn't have that.
All right, real quick, let me cue up the audio here and let's see what Garrett is saying.
Our fishing gets tougher. We definitely so our fishing is in the summer, the flipping, that's when you want to be flipping. It's really good to flip. And it seems like once our fall transition hits, that bite completely dies. And then you have to kind of, do something else. The fish start running around chasing bait. Whereas I feel like on these lakes, yes, the bite gets tougher, but the flipping bite, so to say, almost gets a little bit better just because, the fish start getting this matted grass when the water starts coming down and all of that. But, it's definitely, it's just, it's a tough time of year. Anywhere in the country. I know we're kind of coming up into like almost past the fall transition back home, where in October the bite starts picking up again and you start going out there and catching 40 to 100 smallmouth a day, which I kind of hate to miss that, but I also like fishing League Series tournament, so I can't complain.
You bet. Well, Garrett, good job so far in this tournament. Keep it up, and I know you're looking forward to.
All right. Honestly, when you looked at that area, Mark, it looked like just, where do I start? Where would you start?
What I look for when I see that expansive mat of grass is I look for places where two different kinds of grass meet. That is something different in there, and that's where I start looking. I'm also looking for holes, anywhere I can find holes in there where the fish have room to ambush anything that may pass through one of those holes.
All right, let's see what Kyle has to say.
It's been a really slow morning for me today. We have really just got up here to where I feel like it's the best area of the river, at least where I caught 3 of my biggest fish yesterday was here or further north. So I tried to mix it up and fish a lot of the grass and stuff early down there where I feel like the bigger fish are, and it just didn't work. So now we're up here and still just trying to dial in exactly what kind of current breaks they're sitting on, because it's all about the current, and you just got to figure out exactly where they're sitting, and then once you figure that out, we'll be able to run it a whole lot faster and not waste any time, and hopefully catch us a good bag today.
Playing those odds, Mark. Playing those odds.
Yeah.
Now, what will probably happen?
It's all about the current. You think, well, obviously he figured it out yesterday. He's the leader. He had over 19 pounds. But I really think that current is probably going to be different every single day that far up north.
Got to refigure all the time.
Where those
what
fish
will
set up.
probably happen, Mark, is as it warms up there in Alabama, a few more air conditions will get turned on, and a little bit more power demand will cause the dam at Nickajack to have to run a little more water. So as the day progresses, Kyle will find those fish a little bit easier. Watch him make a good run later this afternoon.
Hey, have you ever heard of people fishing in lakes that are, I don't know what you call it, up, down, above Guntersville, where they actually lock through and would fish Guntersville than rather fish the lakes that are up from Guntersville?
Well, there was a big national event held several years ago on the lake below Wheeler, and everyone but one that made the top 10 for the final deal were locking through to Guntersville. They were fishing out of Decatur Harbor, running 60 miles to the Guntersville Dam, and then cutting through. And the actual winner of the tournament locked through Guntersville and then ran another 35 miles to the Goose Pond area and won the event with only being able to fish 2 hours a day.
Wow.
That was a long time ago, but that's about the only one. And the laws, Mark, in Tennessee, Guntersville actually extends into Tennessee, and they can't lock through and they can't fish the upper part of the Tennessee section because of the smallmouth law. You can only possess one 18-inch smallmouth or larger in Tennessee. So even if you found the biggest group, if you could catch 20 pounds of smallmouth, you could only bring one of those back in. So that's why they don't allow the anglers to move to the Tennessee section of Guntersville.
So they can't fish the tail race below Nickajack?
Exactly. And you know that there's brown ones and big spotted ones living up there right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always wondered why it was such a big deal on Pickwick, and you never hear about it on Guntersville. So that must
Right.
be.
It's because of the lake laws in Tennessee. That's the whole deal. See, that's the interesting thing on Kentucky and Barkley Lake. Kentucky Lake in Tennessee, they allow you to carry that, but over on Barkley, you can only have one. In the Tennessee portion, you can only have one smallmouth over 18 inches on Barkley. And both lakes extend into Tennessee. So it's kind of an oddball mix with the regulations.
Watching Kyle here, Mark, do you think he's running like a tree pattern? And he's one of very few people that are running
I don't think he is. I think he takes a swipe at anything that's in front of him there that is really good. There just happens to be a tree there. He picked up a Texas rig to flip in there with a little lighter bait on it. As soon as he cuts around it, he'll pick that big heavy sinker up and continue up the grass. He is junk fishing 101, but he's using the area with more current to play those odds and get those fish positioned so that he can make the right technique for one. Looks
All
like
right.
Bob's doing pretty well, being third in rookie of the year category right there too.
Oh yeah. Hey, while we're kind of taking a break from the action right here, how tough do you think Santee Cooper is going to be, Mark?
That's going to be the one that's going to either propel people into the Classic, win the Angler of the Year, or throw people completely out of the Classic and under the bus. It's going to be really, really tough. I fished an event there in 2009 in the fall. I made the top 40 with a grand total of 13 pounds. I caught 7 pounds a day, just about, and I was thrilled to catch it. It's going to be very stingy because it's such a monstrous place to be, and the fish are going to only be in small areas. We may get lucky and see some big fish caught there, but it's really going to be hard to replicate big fish catches there.
All right. Is he hooked up? Yes, he's got it.
Look at there. That one's going to bump close, looks like. That Santee event, Mark, is the one I'm really, really disappointed I wasn't going to get to go and do due to my injury. That's one I really wanted to fish.
All right. That's 2 for Welcher.
Picking up a little steam.
Now, it was interesting because earlier he said that he went to his big fish area to start and nothing panned out. So now he's just trying to figure it out.
Well, with that second keeper, on the cut line, going to be about 11 pounds a day. Yeah. Kyle now knows that he's going to be fishing tomorrow. He's made the cut. He can move on up. There's a check involved with that. So now you're going to see him change his mindset a little more, and he's going to really spend more time looking for those better fish. I promise you that.
All right. Some people may not realize one thing on Guntersville that has been pretty well fished throughout the year, but really kind of unknown to a lot of people, including myself in the fall, is the bridges and the riprap. What's the scoop on that, Mark?
Well, it's a pinch point. You've got all these bridges, all these causeways that block major bays. So the fish only have one way in and one way out. And anytime I can find a pinch point, even if it's two grass lines that come together and there's a pathway in between it, that's a high percentage place to fish. In the early spring, these fish have been wintering out in the main lake, in the main creek channels, and those populations of Guntersville giants live out there. Every tournament mark from February to about the 1st of April when they move into spawn is won on one of those community hole bridge pinch points. Yeah. Right now, you're starting to see the fish move, come in off the main lake to feed up for fall. So you have some good fish movement. And that's exactly what Zaldane did yesterday. Only got 5 or 6 bites, landed 4 of those, and one of those was one of those Guntersville giants, an 8-6. So that's why those places are so, so important.
But this is pretty close to the time of year when Paul Elias kind of discovered the umbrella rig, but obviously they can't use it. So do you think it's more about the bait, or do you think if they just target them with big single swim baits, an angler could catch big bags on bridges too?
Well, that's what Chris is trying to do. He's throwing that tennis shoe side swim bait right now. and trying to get those better fish. That Alabama rig, that umbrella rig mimics a school of bait fish and hits upon that aggressive instinct, that feeding instinct, where a swim bait doesn't quite have that magnetism, but it's your second best choice. That's for sure.
Cobb's hooked up. Lost it.
Uh-oh. Brandon's one of the most happy-go-lucky people you'll ever meet. I mean, he probably said, golly gosh darn, when he lost that fish, and that was about the best of it. But his very next flip will be just as productive as the flip he just made when he lost that fish. He's really got a great positive mental attitude. He may be the next Forrest Gump of bass fishing. That's for sure.
So, Mark, I grew up fishing walleye. I didn't even know what a bass was for until probably, I was 10 or so. But for someone who's recently just got into bass fishing and tournament fishing and all that stuff, like what makes Southern Lakes so difficult this time of year versus like somewhere in Minnesota? Like right now, our fall bite is just getting on fire and we're getting big fish, big bites all the time. What's different about a southern body of water?
A southern impoundment like Guntersville is so much more shallow than what you're probably used to fishing. Most of the lakes that I fished in Minnesota have a definitive outside grass line edge and a basin. Minnetonka is the one I'm the most familiar with. You have so much flat and so much area these fish can roam in. It's very hard to find that one place where you have fish gathered. You have an inside grass line, you have an outside grass line. And the other thing that you have so many more predators that have teeth up there that your largemouth bass population, if he wants to survive, has to move up and get in some cover. We don't have that issue here with muskie and things like big pike and things like that. So bass are our top predators and they can move and roam freely. But the definition of your grass line is what is so much easier to fish in your lake versus a lowland impoundment like a Guntersville or a Kentucky lake.
The other thing I think is we're past where they are already, right? We've leapfrogged them. We're further along in the fall.
Certainly.
They're late summer. Like this is what we get like Labor Day when it gets tough in Minnesota, and now we're already getting to the better bite. So if you fast forward another month in Guntersville, the bite's going to pick up too. So.
Exactly. I mean, and the fall transition does exactly what the spawn does. In January, they spawn in Florida. It moves up to Georgia a week or two later, and it keeps moving up till it finally gets up north. We're on the inverse of that. We're coming back down more towards the winter time. You're getting more towards a winter bite, where these guys down here right now are in that late summer, early fall period. So that's why things are so scattered out right now.
Hey, Mark, as
so
we
it's just
watch
time of the year.
Yeah. Hey, Mark, as we watch Brandon Cobb, I'm curious, how important is the depth around the grass that he's fishing? I'm not talking about the depth that the grass is in that he's trying to punch or flip or whatever, but is the depth around the area that you're trying to target important?
Well, it certainly can be, Mark, and I would be willing to bet that right out in front of Brandon, where you can see more of a ripple on top of that water, is a creek channel that probably that meanders through that flat. There's either a creek channel or he's out there close to the river channel. There is a depth change there close somewhere. So that depth change is what they're going to use to migrate and filter out through. And where he is dropping on that grass may be a little thinner. There may be a hard bottom under it. There may be a few isolated stumps in that area that create that area underneath the top of the grass for those fish to get positioned. But I promise you, there's a depth change there close to where he's at.
Okay. Good stuff for the fans there. All right. Any questions, guys?
I just got a quick one. Mark, I know obviously you're not there, but typically this time of year, what kind of water temps are they dealing with? Like somebody was saying, I'm on northern Minnesota and I had 58-degree water temp last night. So curious what they're fishing for water temps.
My understanding is when practice started, it was about 74, 75 degrees, and we've just started getting these cool nights. We've had a north wind for the last couple of nights in a row, and water temperatures have fallen to about 68 to 70 right now. That would be your morning temperature, and as the day goes on, it'll sneak back up into that 71, 72 degree range. You know, the key temperature for me this time of year, I really like 68 to about 60. Seems like those fish are more prone to power fishing techniques, a spinnerbait, a bladed jig, a buzz bait, things like that, things that I can move. And since the water's a little bit warmer, I think that's why you're seeing more of this flipping and punching going on. As I mentioned before, that water level came up and it kind of blew out what we call the Guntersville cheese on top of those mats. And that's why a frog has not a player like one would think it would have been had they not lost that cheese on top of the grass.
That makes complete sense, because about 2 weeks ago when we were in the high 60s up here, frog bite, flipping bite was nuts. Now the last 2 days, I kind of got my rear end kicked in a little bit.
I got you.
Hey, Mark, on the instant feedback, the King of Kentucky, I guess that's his handle, wants to know if you had to pick your favorite 3 lakes in Kentucky, not named Kentucky Lake or Barkley, what would they be?
The very first one would be Green River Reservoir, the most beautiful lake in Kentucky and probably one of the best sleepers in Kentucky. My second choice is a little lake that's not known for a lot of big fish, but a fantastic lake to fish, is Lake Broshears. It's a 700-acre lake here in Western Kentucky that is just, it looks like a baby bull shoals, has a great population of fish, and one of the lakes in Kentucky that has always had the best average for catching 3-pound plus bass is Barren River Reservoir near Bowling Green, are fabulous 3 lakes. The other lake that I would give a standout to is Cumberland. Cumberland was down for several years. There's an undergrowth there, and the bass population has bounced back. And it is a 3-level fishery. You have a great spotted bass fishery, a solid largemouth fishery, and a good smallmouth fishery. So we have great lakes here in Kentucky, that's for sure. You know, one of the things, Mark, I will mention about my home state is we have more miles of navigable water than any other state in the lower 48. So we've got great fishing opportunities here in Kentucky.
What was the lake where Reelfoot was?
That's Reelfoot.
It's Reelfoot?
Yes.
Okay.
That lake was made in the 1800s when we had a monster earthquake, and it actually sank a little bit. The Mississippi River filled that in and created Reelfoot Lake. We had 2 major earthquakes in 1811 and 1812 that formed that lake.
But that's Tennessee, right? Not Kentucky.
That is Tennessee. It kind of sneaks a couple parts of it kind of sneak in across the border there just barely, but it is primarily a Tennessee reservoir. Yes.
Okay.
It's a place where time stands still. It's beautiful.
That is a cool place. All right. Any questions, guys? This is cool stuff.
I guess just a comment. I kind of observed that it seemed like with Austin Felix, Seth, and Bob Downey all in the top 10 yesterday, and they all kind of had better afternoons. We didn't see live coverage of any of them, but that made me think that they were on a grass slipping bite. And I guess I just kind of think that that's the bite that's going to carry anglers consistently through the week versus, I don't know, I see like guys fishing docks or hardcover and things like that. I think on average throughout the week, I feel like that grass bite is going to get strong and that's going to carry and replenish. I don't know. What do you think, Mark?
I think your opportunity for consistency in grass is going to be better. But again, it is the proverbial needle in the haystack because there is so much coverage of that grass. There's so much surface coverage of it. I saw a little bit of footage of Austin yesterday. They did a FaceTime with him, and he was throwing a frog late in the afternoon. But unlike most people, he was fishing it painfully slow, painfully slow. And I think that's when he was really trying to bump his stringer up with a couple of quality fish, and he got 1 or 2 of those late in the afternoon. So that afternoon bite in the grass is always better.
Do you think that's why Seth is doing so well? Is like for some reason he has like a sixth sense of being able to like pick out a just small clump and think there's there's a fish there and from a flipping perspective?
Well, one of the unique things that happens, he has fished grass all of his life for both greenfish and brownfish. So he has a great understanding of how fish relate to grass. When I grew up fishing on Kentucky Lake, the only grass that we saw, you used a lawnmower to cut it. We did not have it. So I had to learn how to fish grass while on tour. So he is obviously very comfortable fishing grass. He knows the species of grass that fish tend to get in more than others, and he knows what those irregularities are nationwide, because a bass is a bass. The fish act the same way they do in Florida as they do in Minnesota and anywhere in between. So he's been very successful anytime he's in a grass situation, just because he has that basic understanding of where they locate.
All right, anybody else? Jason, hang on, let me get you unmuted. All right, go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, so I was wondering, Mark, is there fish in these grass areas? Because I've heard yesterday a couple of the guys were mentioned, like, the bluegill aren't popping as much as they were when I was there in practice. Are they like keying on bluegill in specific areas, or are they keying on shad, or both? Does it kind of, and how does that affect their bait?
Well, what the bluegill does for me, when I'm going down a stretch and I hear, and those bluegill are popping, it's life. It's the refrigerator. They're going to be, it's the buffet line. That's where they're going to be, because there's an opportunity to feed. That's one of the things that you hope to find, some kind of a bottom difference there, be it a harder bottom, be it a thinner grass, whatever it is. But listening for those bluegill is a big key. And when I am in that area and I do hear that, I'm going to have a frog. It's probably going to be a good frog bite. And I know immediately that a creature bait's going to be good, like a Strike King rodent or a minnow scrub or something that's small and compact that looks like a bluegill. So that cuts my search down and just gives me more confidence knowing if there's bluegill there. There's a bass there somewhere close trying to eat one of them. So yesterday, I guess the weather conditions didn't allow those bluegill to get up higher in the water column. Probably the drop in a temperature, a degree or two in temperature, slowed those bluegill down, and they didn't get as aggressive. And that's what kind of became a negative factor for those anglers that were looking for that.
To follow up on that frog question, I know a lot of times in that early post-spawn we're using a lot of sunfish-looking orange belly. So if you hear that popping in the fall time, Mark, are you going to, if it's high sun, are you going to a dark black frog, or are you still trying to mimic that sunfish with the lighter orangish, bluish colors?
Well, down here, what I'm really looking for in the grass, and anytime I can find it on the Tennessee River, if I can find gizzard shad in the grass, I'm going to use that whiter style of bait. If you find gizzard shad in an area, particularly on Guntersville, there's grown ones there. So I have more of a shad-based population, where you guys are dealing with perch, yellow perch, and bluegill. So you have the tendency to use more of a darker colored bait. That's the only reference I have on that. But when on this particular river system, when you find gizzard shad, you're gonna be up there high in the standings, because those bigger fish just love that gizzard shad.
All right, let's go to Brandon real quick. Mark, are you kind of surprised with what he's doing right now? We haven't seen that all day long.
Well, I can't tell what he's throwing. Like, has he picked his buzz bait back up? It's what kind of what it's looking like.
Yeah.
He's so proficient using that frog on top of that buzz bait. He's looking for that one good bite. He's looking for that big fish. Big fish have a tendency to want to feed up most of the time, and that's why you catch big fish on topwaters. And any second, I'm ready to see it explode right there. He has ultimate confidence in that buzz bait and frog combination. So again, it's what you're comfortable with right now is how you end up fishing these big matted areas like this.
And I think the buzzbait is great. When you talk about that gizzard shad, that big gizzard shad and the buzzbait go hand in hand.
I agree. What's funny, guys, is a buzzbait and a pitching stick with a 2-ounce weight are my weakest forms of fishing. I will take every fish that bites my buzzbait, and I will miss him because I jerk it away from him, and I physically just can't drop that 1.5 ounce, 2 ounce sinker for very long during the day's time with my old tired elbows. But a buzzbait, I do everything I possibly can not to pay attention to that buzzbait. It's the only way I can catch him, not looking at it.
Let's see if we can get his audio here.
For the buzzbait though. Need some chop.
He's wanting a little chop on the water so it breaks up that sunlight a little bit so that fish doesn't get quite as good
I
a
needed
look.
the old flipper. That was a solid one though, at least 3.
There's nothing like the squeak of that old blade and seeing a
Well, I
big.
believe that's all she wrote. That's right on down the lake.
All right, so he's done with that. So is that typical, Mark? And you might see a blow up. You might have one on. You throw that buzz frog out there and try and get a reaction.
Yeah, it is. And what's crazy about it, Mark, is it's always a good one. I mean, you're not going to put him on the bump board. You're going to put him straight in the live well, and he may be 4 or 5 inches across the eyes too. So that buzzbait has that power to draw that big fish, even on conditions like today.
All right, let's see if we can get audio on Morgenthaler. That is some thick-looking stuff there.
From 10th, so hit a nice
Really
big
is
one.
thick.
15,
This is
13.
how Tad loves the fish. Here's bald eagles in the background.
Chad's the only angler so far this morning that we've watched that is doing the same thing. One rod, one bait, flipping mats, and I think that's what we'll see all day long from him.
Did you do it all day yesterday?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just feel so comfortable doing this. And as the sun gets higher, should be better and better for him. He's sitting in second place right now, though.
Hey, Mark, when this is going on, are you punching the thickest grass that you can find, or are you trying to pick apart the holes?
No, I'm looking for the heavy stuff. I'm looking for stuff that's creating shade, that's the thickest stuff on top.
Two of our leaders, Austin Felix and John Cox,
Matt
still
that's
on
been there a
one
while,
fish
there'll
on
be a little
the
bit of an opening there just due to the shade covering of the grass. So when I punch it through there, I'm targeting the thickest stuff. At lower light conditions, I'm looking for the holes. But right now, with high and blue like this, I would be fishing the thickest stuff I could find.
All right, as we look on the left side to Welcher, that's an interesting type of structure that he's fishing.
Well, what's coming up right there are barge tie-ups, and he caught his biggest fish yesterday off of one of those barge tie-ups, as that is a current break that sticks out there a little deeper than the grass line. So he got 2 or 3 bites doing that yesterday. They all went in his live well. So there's about 12 or 15 of those up that bank towards that tower where he's at, that he's got a lot of hope in the next few minutes that he's going to get another good bite.
I mean, it's kind of just like a bridge piling, isn't it?
Sure. It's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
But the bank line there, Mark, the left-hand side of that tie-up is going to be shallower than the right-hand side of that. That bank line's coming down at a 45 degree. So he's got deeper water on the outside right edge. He's got probably a little bit of grass line in between the bank and the inside edge. And that inside edge is probably where he'll get his bite this morning. As the day progresses, the outside edge would happen.
Making a change.
I bet a jig goes by the bottom of that tie up there, as he did yesterday. He's got a good clump of grass he wants to drop a couple times before he gets there.
You ever caught him off those barge ties?
Oh, yeah. Many, many times. And see, that barge tie up on the outside edge is on the outside edge of that grass where the current has come through. And that's a great place to catch a big spotted bass as well.
Looks like we're going close to a bridge.
Now, that's actually Rose Well, no, that looks like the Mink Creek area right there.
Duck and go.
Now, Clint, he is a grass flipper. He likes that flipping stick in his hand as good as anybody does. Clint's one of those guys that'll just get in an area, settle down. Clint fishes very old to be a young man. He had a very successful college career at Montevallo, and he fishes very old for his age. Look at him; he's got a spinning rod in his hand.
Wow.
He may just be trying to get a bite right now. He's in Mill Creek, not Mink Creek. He's in Mill Creek right now.
Let me see if I can get the audio.
Go get a couple of lucky bites, if you want to call it that. That's how I feel about this lake right now. It's not luck, but it feels like it to catch a big one. So, but I just know if I can get 5 in the boat, I feel like I'll be fishing tomorrow. Maybe have a good afternoon or a big day tomorrow, because it's a tough thing to crack right now.
So, Clint, you got a lot of hours on Lake Guntersville. Have you fished it in the fall of the year, or are you like so many other anglers fish it in the winter and in the spring?
Well, yeah, I'm usually sitting in a tree stand this time of the year. When I was in college, I definitely fished here a lot. The lake it's not even like it used to be. It used to be slap full of hydrilla and milfoil, and now it's eelgrass and stargrass. And I'll be honest with you, I don't really get it like I used to. It's completely changed.
So has the eelgrass just kind of taken over some of those flat areas where milfoil was, and those fish don't set up in it like they do the milfoil?
I assume. When we were here in the Classic, they were in the eelgrass really good. Somebody could have caught them out of it yesterday, but man, seems like when I get around that stuff, if there's not some kind of hydrilla or milfoil there, I'm not getting any bites this time of the year, which is really strange. They're just buried up in the thicker grass when you can find them.
Well, Clint, I know you're trying to get one more in the boat there, and then pass on through to tomorrow. And we wish you luck. We wish you luck tomorrow. Looks like you're doing pretty good today. And
all right, does that kind of surprise you, Mark?
Yeah, it kind of surprises that Clint feels like he's trying to finesse down to get one more bite. I would have really thought he'd had that flipping stick in his hand going for the gusto, but he's just trying to get in the cut for tomorrow, and he'll put that little fairy wand down tomorrow and pick up that flipping stick and fish like a big boy.
That just looks like some thick stuff there.
It takes a 1.5 ounce to 2 ounce weight to get through some of this stuff. You can see how big a splash that made when Chad pulled that out of the water.
Yeah.
Looks like heaven to me.
All you're looking for in that grass is 10 minutes of glory. That's all you're looking for. And when it goes down, it's a lot of fun.
But like you said, Mark, 8 hours of that in a day does wear on you. So I would imagine with your body and trying to rehab it, that probably wouldn't be the best thing to do right now for 8 hours.
No, my elbows are in such bad shape from all these years of fishing and playing collegiate tennis that I just physically can't do that for long periods. I just have to fish around it sometimes, and it's a negative when I have to, and it's going on. But it's just what I have to do for me personally. I just cannot do it.
I do have that in common with you. I played tennis my whole life, so it's kind of neat.
I don't get to play near as much as I used to, but I still follow it. Looking at Bass Track here, Mark, it's numbers of 2 pound plus fish is what I'm seeing. The guys at the top, seeing a lot of limits, a lot of double limits there. 10 fish, 24 pounds. 10 fish, 25 pounds. Of course, Seth is one of those comfortable grass fishermen. Jochimson is doing some things a little bit different, Mark. He's fishing those causeways, but he's fishing individual pieces of structure. And that's one of the places that you can use that live scope type technology looking forward and pick those individual fish out that are moving through that have set up on a causeway. So that's what Carl's doing today. That's one of the things he always does when he comes here.
Very cool. Hey, I want to let everybody know we have about 10 minutes remaining. So if there's some questions that you want with Mark, feel free to jump in there. And there's another, maybe a keeper.
That looks like a flathead bass right there. Looks like a spotted bass right there. That one's not going to quite cut the mustard for him, I don't believe. We'll be close.
Hey, Mark, you were just mentioning Bass Track, and I think the thing that I find most ironic about Bass Track is when's the last time you've seen an event where the day one cut line, there will be guys that didn't have a limit on 2 days.
Oh, on days like today, yesterday they had wind. So the wind was always your friend. It makes the fish more active. If you're not on anything, Brett Pruitt was one guy that really struggled yesterday on camera, and he managed to get his fifth fish and have an 11-pound day. And that was all because of wind. There's no wind there today, so the fishing may get really, really tough on some of these guys that just were fortunate to get 5 yesterday. Didn't have a quantity of fish to go to, just fishing, and got lucky that the wind presented itself and presented some of those fish to him. So there will be a lot of flip-flopping on Bass Track today, I promise.
There's a handful of guys in the top 40 that only have 6 fish total right now.
Exactly. That was 5 from yesterday and 1 or 2 today. Kyle Monty's one of those guys that had 15 pounds, and he's only showing 16 at this point. But Kyle's flipping the grass. He's a Florida fisherman, and as those fish move higher in the water column in that grass, Kyle's numbers will improve during the day.
Hey, did these guys need wind right now, Mark? Would wind help the bite?
It would help considerably, Mark. Yeah. It just activates those fish. They're not really in a good mood right now anyway, and flat water is awfully hard to get them to bite. So the technique Chad's using should help him in this flat condition because he's fishing the shade of that thick mat. Where yesterday he could get to his left right there, and on that little point of grass, wind blowing in on it, he knows that fish would have been right there. So he's having to stay and fish a lot more thorough than he did yesterday. And that slows you down. It just slows you down on the amount of real estate you can cover. And with Kyle up there junk fishing, I guarantee you most of his fish were, current positions your fish first, and wind is a secondary factor. And where he is, he found the place where the wind and the current pushed him to a place, and then it was game on. So today he's only having to focus with the current, so he's caught less fish today. Bass Track's lighting up, guys. There's a lot more fish being caught. You're seeing a lot more names being lit up on Bass Track with additional 2-pounders.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, a shout out to Clay. Hey, listen, the only reason I can't post some of those comments is typically Matt is here to help me with that. It's kind of hard with what I have going on, trying to bring the action and the stream and do everything else. So I apologize that I'm not able to post that most of the time when we're doing a regular show. That's not an issue, but that looks like another keeper for
Morgan Thaler. Yeah. He's been a long time. So that fish is pretty big-headed and a relatively thin-railed fish right there. That's a typical post-summer fish that's been living in the grass for a long time. A little tougher to feed for those fish when there's so much grass in the way for them to find their prey.
Well, that's 5 for Morgan Thaler, and that's got to free him up at least having that limit with so much time remaining, Mark, that it's got to be a great feeling.
Oh, it is. Chad knows he's fishing tomorrow. So now what he's got is got a half a day, well, more than a half a day to look for that better fish that's going to give him enough cushion that all he has to do tomorrow is catch another 12 pounds, and he's fishing on Sunday or the final day, championship Saturday in this event. So he's ready. Look at that big giant sinker there and a creature bait he's using to get through that grass. He's ready now. Now he can readjust and try to catch that bigger fish, which may just be a simple bait change, a little larger bait to present to the fish, or just staying put in what he's doing. I bet you $1 he'll keep that flipping stick in his hand the rest of the day.
Oh, yeah. Hey, I want to let everybody know next week we're going to do the same thing. They have back-to-back events. Mark is going to be here next Thursday for the Santee Cooper event. And, Mark, we might have a little bit more fill time on that one.
we very well could, Mr. Jeffries. We very well could.
Yeah.
You're going to see a few guys have some very successful areas to fish in, and then you're going to see some guys just like this event really struggling for bites. So it's going to be the haves and the have-nots in that tournament as well.
All right. Any final questions for Mark as we try and wrap today up?
The way Chad's fishing is like paint drying to me. I just despise fishing like that. But it can be productive. It sure can be.
I got a question about Santee, Mark, here quick. I don't know where I heard this. It was last week, but they said there's been some 25, 30-pound bags brought in the last week to 2 weeks. Is that correct?
Well, Davey was saying that yesterday, that there's been some big single-day catches. And that's the thing about Santee. It has got a giant population of 6 to 8 pound fish in that lake. So you get lucky and catch 3 of them, you got 20. You catch 4 of them, you got 25. So it's just tough to find them gathered up this time of year. We're going to see some big fish caught, but I'm going to say 12 pounds a day is going to get you in that cut line very easily. The upper echelon of the tournament, you may see 2 big bags followed by moderate bags win that event next week. I don't think you're going to see 4 gigantic bags weighed in that tournament to win that event. But it's still going to take good weight. I'd say, 64 to 68, probably put you all around it for 4 days, would be my guess.
All right. Very cool stuff. I want to thank everybody for taking part in the watch party. Mark, you do a great job, man. I mean, it is just outstanding to be able to pick your brain and watch what these guys are doing as we see one final hookup here. That looks like a decent one.
A crankbait caught fish. How about that?
Well,
that's how Randy caught him yesterday and got him. That'll give him a little juice.
Got it. I think, is that Chockumson right in front of him on the same bank?
It looked like it. It sure looked like. See, he's in the cut.
Yeah.
And Carl's up there throwing a jig, just super, super slow and super steady. And Randy's just trying to cover water.
Man, that fish is skinny. Ooh.
Bet you $1 he doesn't throw him back because he's skinny.
No, he will not. All right, great stuff, Mark. Such an outstanding job, and I know the fans appreciate it, even on the replay, and we will do it again. Once again, a lot of thanks to Bass and the staff there. We have received approval to do this on the 3 remaining events, so we're going to be good to go for Chick. We're going to be good to go for Santee Cooper, and then we're going to be good to go to one that I'm really looking forward to, Lake Fork. And just a fantastic way to break down what's going on the water. And there are very few people that do it as good as you, Mark.
Well, thank you, Mark. You're providing me a lot of motivation, not getting to finish out the season due to injury. This is kind of making that desire bubble up a little bit. I've been lacking that. I've been spending a little time with my son fishing. If you go to bassmaster.com and read my blog, I'm really proud that my son's starting to enjoy fishing a little more, and it's great to spend time with that young man. He's having a lot of fun and makes me want to fish more too. So thanks for having me, guys. Great questions today from all of you all. I can tell you all are very serious about bass fishing, and it's always good to talk to people that love fishing as much as I do. So thanks for being on part of this.
All right, great stuff, guys. Make sure you spread the word on what we have going on here with the watch party. We'll have it again next Thursday from Santee Cooper. That will be day 1, though, I believe day 1. And then we'll do it 2 more times after that. Once again, if you're listening to the replay on iTunes, please leave us a review and give us a ranking. It helps us out immensely. So that's going to wrap things up today. Mark, be safe. We will talk to you next week. Hey, if you guys want to take part again next week, just shoot me an email. Matt will be back on Monday Folks, you do not want to miss Monday's show. We're going to have Frank Scalish on, and he is going to talk about boat setups for rough water. All right? We had an enormous amount of requests to get somebody on to talk about setting up your boat for rough water in it. Hey, we could talk about smooth water too, but there's not too many people out there that know rough water like Frank, and can't wait for that show. Frank is awesome, and we will have him on Monday. And then on Tuesday, we are working to get the guy on the West Coast that is absolutely smashing them. Ty Au will talk about his success on Clear Lake, and then the U.S. Open is coming up. We have more on the U.S. Open coverage that we're going to do. We'll talk about that next week. Mac, back on Monday. I'm back on Monday. Thank you so much. Everybody be safe. That's it. We're out of here.
Peace out.
Here comes Spider-Man.